depends on where you find that a look at this.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. Well, it's now time for us to take a look at the front pages of the dailies this morning and see what the offerings are. We're going to start with the Daily Trust newspaper, and it carries this major headline on the front page. 2023 e-transmission of election results has come to stay, says INEC. And results, riders here, they say 27 by-elections pending. And what we have learned from Kenyan presidential poll. Debates good for democracy. And the other headline on the front page of the Daily Trust reads, power outage as TCN workers strike crashes electricity grid. And the riders here, union suspends action, and why we couldn't meet 5,000 megawatt target since July, says the federal government. Details of that on page 22. Further headlines here, ISWAP abducts 6 farmers in Borno, demands 5 million naira. And NMPP backs Media Trust 2023 election debate. Troops dislodge bandits camp, rescue baby, 6 female hostages in Kaduna. And at the top of the front page there, below the masthead, $418 million Paris Club refund. Governors tackle Malami, say fraudulent, self-serving. Why Shekaro's associates failed to secure NMPP's tickets, say Kwankwaso. Details of that on page 31. And Niger, Benin, Togo owe Nigeria 5.8 billion naira for power in 2022. Now that is attributed to a report. Now these are the major headlines on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Quite interesting stories there, Sunday. One that actually catches the eye is the last one here that I just read. Niger, Benin, Togo owe Nigeria 5.8 billion naira for power in 2020. I mean, like, that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Because a lot of people have actually raised this argument that we don't have enough, and we're still giving it to other people.
I think the argument had always been made that if you are a big brother, you don't have to have enough before you are able to share.
Oh, really?
Which sort of makes some sense.
Okay.
I don't know whether to blame the creator for being too partial by endowing this country with so much, and yet having neighbors that are practically struggling to eke a living, battling all kinds of natural disasters or phenomenon that had made them completely dependent on the progress and success of Nigeria. So while it may appear that we haven't enough, to go around, we have to find a way to share what we have.
Yeah, but we're supposed to get paid for it, and according to this report, we're not being paid for it.
I'm sure even the amount that is owed the generating companies in Nigeria far outweighs whatever neighbors owe. I think the dilemma is the recognition that the world has gone through so much in the last 2 years, and that has really worsened the fiscal conditions of these countries. And the implication for that is that you will be lacking behind on so many of your responsibilities. This is one of those. My thinking is, on a scale, they would want to say, this is our big brother. They would never put us to shame. They would never flog us in the open. We can as well extend these obligations a little longer. Okay. Let's try to see how we get in the vitals, the foods, the pharmaceuticals that are important to keep our people from.
But still, a debt is a debt. For how long is too long? I mean, like, this has been since 2020. It's 2 years down the line now.
I'm not sure what the payment modalities are for these things. Maybe the report will reveal a bit more of how that is. I doubt if it is in the form that we have in Nigeria, where you basically you pay before you get the service, or you get your bill, usually after 30 days. But this is more like a bulk purchase agreement. I'm sure we'll be able to sort it out. The Nigerian authority will tell you it's a family affair.
Yeah, well, just like you've actually put a blanket on everything when you said we are the big brother and we have to support
Yes,
our younger
being big
neighbors.
brother come with a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm sure this is one of those. It's difficult to explain these things, but I mean, in the face of our lack, we have seen Nigeria raise relief materials to places that have been hit by disaster. We came through for Haiti, no matter how small you think that is, and a number of places where there had been one kind of natural disaster. We are basically living with several forms of disasters, if you like, man-made and natural. But when these things happen across the world, it is vital that you show that camaraderie.
Yes.
And somehow we've been able to do that.
Actually, we are human before anything
We
else.
are. Absolutely.
Definitely.
And moving on to the next paper for this morning, we'll be looking at the Punch newspaper. And on the front page of the Punch this morning, we have PDP crisis, peace threatened. Wike Atiku's men disagree over IU. Clearly, it does appear that this IU's embargo will not go away anytime.
It's not going quietly.
Anytime soon. IU must go for talk to proceed, governor's men. IU won't resign, says PDP theme. It seems devil has entered the PDP, says George, as negotiators disagree over venue. Go to your village. Elections are not won in Abuja hotel, Wike tells candidate. It's firestorm there. We're not sure when that is going to go away. And very interestingly, you have the picture of the frontrunner of the APC, Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu, right there with former president. Some people like to call him the number 12 or 13th? There with Asiwaju on his nationwide consultations. And in other pictures, you'll find him there with the Ogun State governor and other associates of the APC candidates. It will be interesting to get the details of what those conversations were around, and I'm sure in due course we would hear more from there. APC supporters hold carnival as Tinubu visits Obasanjo. And we have right there, ASU begins consultations on next move. You find that story on page 8. Great-grandma collapses, die while climbing Lagos Bridge. Wow. And northern youth protesting security in Abuja. Other stories on the front page, we have electricity workers call off strike, businesses count losses. Chenkos, Discos, O Bank, 835 billion amidst crisis. We must begin to find ways to solve this problem, otherwise the power generating company may have to go under. $480 million refund. Governors knock Malami over commission. And how transactional firms swindles Nigeria's orders of over $3 million. You'll find the details of that story on page 29. We were just talking about debts. We have seen the part of the Nigerian firms, but we saw that somehow the government was able to negotiate a truce with the electricity workers.
Yeah, albeit temporarily. I mean, they said they're suspending it for 2 weeks, and we see how it goes from there, what happens between now and the 2 weeks if their demands are being met. And we hope we don't experience what we experienced yesterday. Yes, again.
It's not funny.
It wasn't at all.
It's not. But something the government showed yesterday that was instructive was the swift with which they moved.
Yes.
To nip this in the bud.
Exactly.
Because it showed clearly a great deal of responsibility. The Minister of Power yesterday was saying the Labour Minister was unable to be at the council and the Minister of State for Power because they were directly involved in the conversations and negotiations. And I think that is the kind of move. Those are the kinds of activities that Nigerians would want to see at this particular point.
But some might argue that there was an opportunity for the federal government to have been proactive in stopping the strike completely. I mean, like not having us go through what we actually went through yesterday before they negotiated, because I think these terms were given, ultimatums were actually issued before the strike action came over. So a lot of people argue that why didn't they stop it from happening in the first place?
That's true on the one hand. It does begin to feel when you do a trend analysis that we do not take warnings seriously until the reality stares us in the face, and then we begin to run hectic scatter. Like you rightly pointed out, if we had taken the initial warning signs seriously, this would have been negotiated. There wouldn't have been any need to have put off the electricity transmission line for whatever reason, before going to negotiate whatever it was that became a truce.
Well, let's keep an eye on that situation and see what happens between now and the 2 weeks that the reprieve that we've actually gotten. So we'll move on now to the Nation newspaper, which carries this major headline on the front page. Governors hit Malami on $418 million Paris Club payment. They say AGF action self-serving and will pursue matter to Supreme Court. Now, that is the major headline on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Talking about politics now, it says 2023, Tinubu visits Obasanjo amid pomp. Huge crowd at ex-president's library complex and stadium. APC candidate scores Abiodun high. Moving to the top of the front page now, federal government, why we failed to meet 5,000 megawatts target and electricity workers suspend strike. Talking about politics now, PDP taken over by the devil, says Bode George. Bawa, EFCC secured 4,430 convictions in 19 months. And another headline here that says, Lagos Blue Rail Line to begin test run in December. Now, and of course, there's another headline here that says, exposed kidnappers get 50,000 naira, Akeredolu tells residents, and 3 cult suspects held. Details of that can be found on the Nation newspaper this morning. Now, one interesting thing I've just noticed on this is the conviction rate. The statistics being thrown about by the FCC chairman. 4,430 convictions in 19 months. How good is that?
Well, that is surprising to me, if you like, given the number. I'm beginning to wonder how those convictions were secured, whether they were joint pronouncements. Or I'm not sure, perhaps we need more explanations around how they were able to do this.
Well, he did say it took 19 months to actually do that. So.
I mean, 19 months, 4,000 cases. If you divide that by the numbers of days, it does appear like they were securing 1 conviction, or 10 convictions every day. That's huge. I want to commend that. I don't know how they were able to pull that off. But to other Nigerians, they think that these convictions are around issues that cannot or does not appear very significant. For instance, in the mind of a Nigerian, a conviction around what's going on with the immediate past accountant general yes. would appear more significant. Some of those high-profile cases would appear more significant and sending wide-reaching messages than the conviction you secure for a Yahoo boy.
Yeah, because the headline wasn't really specific. It's just that 4,430 convictions, not high-profile convictions. It doesn't go into detail. Maybe the story goes into detail as to the nature of these convictions. But what's alarming is these are the number of convictions, not the number of cases being tried. So it gives you an idea of how large the scale of corruption actually is when you look at it from this perspective. Because if these are the ones that were convicted, where we don't have the number of the ones exactly the ones that have been tried, or the ones that have been tried and even acquitted, and it just goes to show you the volume of corruption that actually goes on.
Nigeria is a big country. We are talking about 200 million people, 60 million of those between the ages of 18 and 35. And that is the bracket where you pick most of these guys who are involved in this. And you are talking about an unemployment rate and underemployment rate put together of around 40% of that 60 million who are eligible to work. Then it then means that you have a huge reservoir of redundant youth
Exactly.
that could take to any kind of vices.
Exactly.
So the pool is huge. 4,000 is just scratching.
Yeah, it's just scratching the surface. That's the problem. I mean, like that is the cause for concern here. Well, at least we should congratulate the FCC.
Yeah, but they've done very well by every standard. But what other nations do, which will be the next step for them, is learning from these convictions. They are not enough to just celebrate merely taking these convictions. I hope these criminals were properly debriefed. And by so doing, we can then begin to take steps to prevent these things. It's far more or less expensive, if you like,
Of course.
to prevent the crime from happening, rather than spend taxpayers' money chasing these guys.
Prosecuting these cases.
And
yes.
chances are that you're probably getting them in after they had spent the proceed of this crime.
Exactly.
I mean, if somebody had carried out some kind of advance fee fraud and had gotten some proceed for them 3-4 years ago, and you are just picking that person up now, there are chances that he would have squandered those sums.
The chances are actually
and then you'd
very
have
high.
spent public funds taking this person to a public court,
Which
who
means-
sits under a judge who takes salary from a public purse.
Which means it's actually more expensive.
Keeping him in jail and feeding him with public money. But I hope it's not the type that the government told us they gave to one of the leaders. That translated to about 1 cow per day. But the truth is, they continue to feed off public funds, and all of this together adds up overall to the cost of pursuing crime. So if we could stop the process that make them commit the crime, and on the other hand, provide jobs that engage them productively, we would have been doing far much more than just securing conviction. But all the same, kudos to the EFCC.
Exactly.
And moving on to the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper has a very elaborate one on its cover. Nationwide blackout, 3 billion naira lost to transmission company of Nigeria strike as grid crashes. Electricity workers suspend industrial actions. Will discuss issue notices. 2 discos issue notices on darkness. Urge communities to safeguard installation. Why we can't generate 5,000 megawatts of power, and that's by the Minister of Power yesterday after the Federal Executive Council meeting. And there you find on the front page pictures of the National Grid Control Center in Oshogbo, and of course the APC presidential flag bearer, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the Ogun State Governor, among others, yesterday during his visit to Obasanjo in Abeokuta. 8 years after leading Buhari to Obasanjo, Tinubu meets ex-president for own ambition. Lagos Blue Rail Line nears completion as engineers launch final track beam. You find the details of that on the Metro page 8. Restructurings won't lead to succession, says Okotie. The details of that you find on page 3. EFCC raid on BDC operators behind Naira rise against the dollar. And this is coming from the EFCC chairman. Antimicrobial agents for treating drug-resistant tuberculosis enters clinical trial. I'm sure a lot of people will be looking forward to the outcome of that claim. Everybody looks forward with positive anticipation. Rivers women protest against destruction of farmlands by suspected herders. And you'll find that story on page 29. Interesting stories there on the front page of The Guardian. But one of note for me, Ibrahim, would be the EFCC raid on the BDC. It has sort of proven to be a very important raid. We've seen the Naira, strengthen back.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. It gained 70 Naira after a week and then dropped back to 50 Naira thereabout. But the thing is, what's important is it sort of halted what appeared like a downward spiral. It was just a free fall. You wake up every day and it's hitting a new level. And we started asking, what exactly is driving this whole thing? What are we doing? Why is everybody, gunning for the dollar?
Well, actually, you see, the thing is, yes, just like you said, the FCC did a good job reading the BDCs and having the Naira strengthen up a little bit. But the thing is, a lot of people are of the opinion that this is just a stopgap, a temporary measure, that other long-term plans need to be made in order to strengthen our Naira.
Absolutely.
That is just the main thing.
Absolutely.
It's just simple economics. Once you import more than you can actually export, then definitely you have a problem with your local currency. And we're not manufacturing enough. We're not producing enough locally. We import a lot of things that we consume. So basically we're a consumer nation, and so what bargaining chip do we have to be able to say, okay, fine, this is what our Naira will stand on? The Naira has no foot to stand on, and that is the major problem that we actually have. So raiding BDCs, yes, you can have a 1-2 day strengthening of the Naira, but for how long will that last?
Absolutely. You more than nailed it. If we have to bring the analyst perspectives into focus, they've talked about the shortage of the dollar, largely because we are not exporting enough. We are depending on imports for virtually everything, including those that we can produce back home. And that is not to say people are not making efforts to produce. There is the economic headwinds that are faced by manufacturers, including business owners, the cost of diesel, the cost of aviation fuel, the problem of insecurity, which is also stopping people from going to the farms where some of these raw materials are coming from. So it's a difficult scenario.
All right, so the next newspaper we're going to be looking at is Nigerian News Direct, which carries this major headline on the front page. It says, electricity grid collapse to worsen over NNPC's cut in gas financing. And that is on page 2. Lagos Blue Line rail nears completion as engineers launch final track beam. TED Fund set to fund facilities for promoting diaspora exports. And moving on to the top of the page, on top of the masthead, we talk about politics. 2023, Tinubu in closed-door meeting with Obasanjo. And IGP honors SP Daniel for rejecting $200,000 bribe. FG 70% broadband penetration target by 2025 achievable, says MTN. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. One story that we've actually seen across all newspapers this morning, Sunday, is, and we've danced around it, is the Tinubu meeting with Obasanjo. Almost all the papers actually carried it. How significant is that when it comes to his own presidential aspirations?
The excitement, I think, is expected. These are two heavyweights that have not exactly been on the same political pedestal, that have held different perspectives as to how this nation can be governed. They've had different ideologies, and they've stood strongly behind their ideologies, and very accomplished people in their own rights, and if you had followed the comments of the former presidents in recent times, the body language appeared to be drifting away from this candidate who had visited. And so he probably wants to cross rank. This man is from the same geopolitical region as himself. He cannot afford to be taking a punch from home when he has greater battles
to fight elsewhere
outside the region. So the political calculations are happening. You could see the kind of heavyweights that followed him on that visit. Everybody is making sure that you have every loose end tightened. You don't want to go into a major battle hemorrhaging from punches.
It doesn't make sense.
So great. I'm sure very interesting days lies ahead. They will want to close ranks, and it's not just about Tinubu. We also saw the PDP candidate visit Shehu Kuti after taking some major punch of the social media. So I'm sure we'll continue to see this in the coming days. And let us move quickly to an international paper before we take a wrap on this section, and we'll be looking at the Financial Times. Interesting headlines here. on the Financial Times, and the major one there for us, it's soaring UK inflation rises above 10% for the first time in 40 years. You know, price outstripped G7 and most of Europe. Peak forecast at 13%. And BOE set to raise rates. Bank, that is BOE, there is for the Bank of Europe. It's the development is one that is shedding down shock across nerves. Prices have hit rooftops, and the citizens are not finding it funny at all. We have other stories there. Japan's latest advice on alcohol to its younger generation: please drink more. Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
That is quite interesting. That's an interesting one.
A very interesting one. It would be good to know what scientific basis would have informed this decision. You know, very interesting offerings there on the front pages of the Financial Times.
All right, well, at this point, we will wrap up the newspaper review for this morning on Daybreak. We'll take a short break, and when we return, the program continues. To stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that